Hello, let's talk a little bit about Beowulf. This is a story that I love. It is an Old English story, right? It shows some Anglo Saxon culture, even though it deals with the Danes and the Geats, right? Both Northern European, more Norse area, right? So a little bit different. And that's okay. But it shows us this advanced culture. It's not very primitive. It had rules and laws and traditions and art, right? And one thing that Beowulf does, this story, is it combines the Bronze Age and the Iron Age. So we see that transition between the two, right? With maybe some of the weapons, maybe the Iron Age weapons being stronger. We see a heavy Christian influence in this story. And the surviving manuscript, the original one that is known, is called the Noel Codex. And this codex has survived fires and floods. It's a little damaged, but it's preserved the best that it can. Of course, it was copied. The story had been copied. We don't know who originally wrote it, but we know that it was copied by Christian monks, which might have a little bit, at least, to do with some of the Christian influence of this story. And this manuscript, the Noel Codex, is from around 975 to 1025 AD or CE. So it's just about 1,000 years old. In the story, the poem begins with a funeral, right? It talks about Schäfing and this great king. So it begins with the funeral of a great king. And then the story, as the actual story begins, we see Hrothgar, who's the king of the Danes, and he builds this mead hall, and he calls it Herot, Hall of the Heart, or the Stag. And it's supposed to be a place for the community to come together and celebrate, right? They can exchange stories, they can celebrate their victories, they can receive rewards. And instead of being a happy place like it's supposed to be, it becomes a horrible place, full of murder and awfulness and blood. And so it starts to represent something very negative for the community. And the Danes are being attacked by Grendel. And the poet doesn't give us a solid description of Grendel. We're not entirely sure what he looks like. You know, he's kind of monstrous, kind of scary. And he's always in the dark. Everything he does is in the dark at night. We know he's a descendant of Cain. And Cain in the Bible committed the first murder. He killed his brother Abel. We know that Grendel hates the Danes. Not entirely sure why, but we know that he has a deep hatred for them. He doesn't like their happiness, right? He doesn't like them. And he's banished to live alone, right? And so he comes out at night. And when Herot is open, Grendel goes in at night and he kills 30 warriors. And he does this repeatedly. So he starts terrorizing the Danes and just slaughtering their warriors. And nothing that they seem to do is able to stop him. So we have the Danes and the Geats, and the Danes are being besieged by this monster Grendel. And the Danes are not Christian, and they are portrayed as not being Christian, right? Some versions even go so far as to say that they pray to Satan in their heathen temples. Some just say that they pray to their pagan gods in their pagan temples. Either way, we can see that they are not Christian in this Christian story, or in this very Christianized story. Then we have the Geats, and the Geats are going to come in and save them. And Beowulf is the strongest of the Geat folk, the best Geat warrior. And he is going to go help Hrothgar. So he brings 14 warriors with him, and 14 is an important number in Christianity, right? So he brings 14 warriors with him to go and help the Danes. And as soon as they arrive, the Geats thank God for granting them safe passage. So this immediately marks them as being different from the Danes, right? We can see that these are Christian people. They are thanking God for granting them safe passage, as opposed to the Danes, who are praying to their pagan gods. Or in some extreme versions, Satan. That one's not as common, though. We have our hero Beowulf. And when Beowulf arrives, he has to explain who he is and tell of his previous feats in order to establish himself and to demonstrate that he's a good warrior. And he offers to battle Grendel by hand. And Unferth, one of the Danish warriors, he tries to put him down. And he says, oh yeah, Beowulf, I've heard of you. He says, "Aren't you the one who lost that race to Brecca?" And Beowulf says, "Yes, I did lose a race, a swimming race. But," right, there's a large but after it. Unferth wants to make him look bad. Beowulf says, "I did lose a swimming race." He said, "My friend Brecca and I were swimming, we were racing, and as we were swimming, this sea monster came and dragged me down," right? So he explains the sea monster attacked him, dragged him down into the depths of the ocean, and Beowulf had to fight this sea monster and kill it, right? So he had to kill this sea monster, and this sea monster had been attacking the local people and making it impossible for them to fish, right, and to enjoy their lives on the seaside. And so Beowulf, he attacked Beowulf, and Beowulf killed him. So not only did he kill a sea monster, he improved the lives of the community because now the sea monster was no longer there to terrorize them, right? And so even though Unferth tried to make him look bad, ultimately it doesn't work because he only lost by a tiny little bit, and he killed a sea monster, and that's what made him fall a little bit behind. Beowulf ultimately does not assume that he's in control of his fate. He trains, he practices, right? He's a good warrior, but he has this belief in Weird or Weird, which is a concept in this Anglo-Saxon culture in fate or destiny, right? That ultimately your ultimate fate is out of your hands. In the Norse have a very similar one. It's one of the Norns called Urdur. It's anglicized as Urd, right? The Norn of fate or personal destiny. So while Beowulf will try his hardest to defeat Grendel, ultimately he understands that he is not in control of his eventual fate, right? So Beowulf and his men devise a plan, and they go into the hall, into Heorot, to wait for Grendel at night, because that's when Grendel attacks, always at night. And Grendel comes in, and he attacks, and he kills one of Beowulf's men, while the other ones are sort of there and watching. And they have to sort of let him. He kills a man. It lets them assess his fighting style, shows them that Grendel really is terrorizing humans, that he is this monster who's coming in and killing innocent men, right? And they're able to see him and how he fights. And so once he kills this man, the rest of the men jump into action and this fight begins. And if you want to read some gory violence, you should read this section of the story. There's a detailed fight, and there's a lot of running and chasing. And eventually Beowulf rips off Grendel's arm, right? So Grendel, they have his arm, the men have his arm, and Grendel's shoulder socket is just sort of spurting blood as he runs off out of Heorot and runs home, where he dies, right? But he leaves this bloody trail along the way from all this blood that's gushing out of his elbow or his shoulder socket, right? And so Grendel is dead, and the Danes feel that they can finally relax and celebrate, enjoy their hall and their mead hall. And Beowulf is rewarded for his feat, Beowulf and his men. So there's a big celebration in the mead hall. It's in use again there. It's able to be a community place again. Hrothgar's queen, who's not necessarily named in the original, but is in some versions. And when she is named, her name is Fialtheow. She sort of distributes rings and gifts to these brave warriors, presents rewards, and everyone is drinking and their guard is down, right? And while their guard is down at night, Grendel's mother comes in and attacks, and she kills one of Hrothgar's warriors. Some versions say it's a friend or a warrior, some say it's his best friend. But she wants revenge, right? They killed her child, her son. And so Grendel's mother comes in and she kills one of them. And the Danes knew about Grendel's mother, but they did not fear her because she was a woman. They didn't really think about her as being an issue or a threat because she was female. So she goes in and kills one of the men, and then Beowulf and his men follow Grendel's bloody path back. Right, they follow the trail of blood that he had left, and they go to find his lair where his mother is. Right, and when they get there, Unferth, who had tried to discredit him, who didn't want Beowulf there in the first place, now trusts Beowulf, right? He's saved him. And so Unferth gives Beowulf his sword, Hrunting, and Beowulf gives Unferth his sword, right? They exchange swords. Swords with names are powerful, so we know that Hrunting is a powerful sword. It must have seen some stuff, right? It's reliable. But remember, this also blends Bronze Age and Iron Age, so we're not sure necessarily what it's made from. And it shows the difference the difference between non-Christian cultures and Christian. Remember, Unferth is from the pagan Danes, and Beowulf is from a Christian culture. So they exchange swords, and they go to fight Grendel's mom. And she manages to grab Beowulf and drag him down into the cave, right? Her lair. And this is where she is strong. It's dark. It is underground, right? It's where all the bad things happen. Nothing good is associated with being in the darkness or underground. And so they are fighting. And Beowulf has Unferth's sword, and it fails. It just breaks, right? And so think about why that might be. Especially symbolically. Like, what do you think the poet's trying to say there? Grendel's mother is winning the battle against Beowulf, and she is strong, and she is motivated by revenge and hatred, and so she is about to kill Beowulf. Beowulf is going to die underground, killed by this mom of a monster, and God intervenes and shines a light on the walls of the cave, and it hits this giant's blade. And Beowulf sees it and is able to grab this blade and sort of kill her at the last minute. And her acid blood sort of melts away the blade. And so he takes Grendel's head, right? Grendel's there, he's dead. And the jeweled hilt from this blade back with him above ground, right? Where good things happen in the light above ground. But he takes Grendel's head to show that he is dead, and this jeweled hilt with him. And so the people all celebrate again. Hrothgar and Beowulf pledge to be allies for the rest of their life. Hrothgar gives Beowulf 12 treasures. 12 is an important number in Christianity in both the Old Testament and the New Testament. And so these two men pledge to be allies for the rest of their lives. And Beowulf and his men return home, right? So the Geats return home, where Beowulf rules as king for 50 years, and he has a very peaceful, very successful reign, right? So his people are prosperous and successful, and he is a good king for 50 years. But after 50 years, a slave steals a goblet from a dragon's treasure hoard, and dragons like their treasure, right? You always see them counting it. It's what they like. They like their gold, and this slave steals a single goblet, and this dragon decides that he wants to punish all of the Geats for it. And so he starts terrorizing the Geats. And Beowulf, as the king, even though it's been 50 years since he was that young warrior, he killed Grendel and Grendel's mother and the sea monster, right? Even though he's an old man now, he goes to fight the dragon because that's his job as king, right? He's still his people's protector. And he takes 11 men with him. And if you know a lot of the Christian stories and you're following the symbolism here of Beowulf being set up as this Christ-like hero, it might make sense why he only takes 11 men with him, because he is going, sorry, as I cough, he's going for his last battle. He is going to die. Spoiler alert. And at the end of his life, Christ only had 11 apostles left because one of them had betrayed him, right? So there's 12 men in total, but it's Beowulf, this Christ-like hero figure, and his 11 men. And he goes to fight this dragon, and it does not go well. His sword is blunted, and he's just beset by evil. He can't get in a good hit on this dragon. He's slipping, he's falling. His comrades desert him. He is losing. Think about why the poet has the comrades desert him. And it's more than that they don't want to be on the losing side. They don't want to get killed by a dragon, sure, but these are brave warriors. Think about it symbolically. And when a person dies, right, they go on that final death journey alone. Even if there are people around them, they have to ultimately go on it alone, right? So Christ, when he was up there, ultimately he was alone. And so his comrades all desert him except for his nephew Wiglaf. And Wiglaf tries to shame the other men into coming back. He sort of talks to himself, but not really. Like, what kind of men would leave their leader to fight this dragon alone? And what kind of cowards would do this, right? Trying to shame these men into coming back and fighting with Beowulf so that they stand a chance of defeating this dragon. And it fails. The other men just do not go back. And so Wiglaf is left alone with Beowulf as the sole person to help him. Beowulf's sword breaks. The dragon bites him as Beowulf strikes a killing blow. So they have both given each other a fatal blow. There's mutual demise. They are both going to die. The dragon and Beowulf will both die. And as Beowulf is dying, Wiglaf is there. And Beowulf explains that he wants his body to be burned and then buried in a barrow, which is sort of this raised sort of burial mound. You can see a picture of it there. And Beowulf makes Wiglaf his heir, tells him to, go be a good king. And so Wiglaf does, he collects Beowulf's body and the dragon treasure and everything. And when he goes back, he punishes the comrades, the men who left, and he banishes them, right? And he tells them that not only are they banished from that particular area, that village, right, that settlement, anywhere they go, Wiglaf is going to spread the story far and wide that they are cowards, that they deserted their king, right? And so they will not be welcomed anywhere, basically, in their society. No one will take them in. And so Wiglaf takes the dragon treasure, and the story ends with Beowulf's funeral, right? He is burned, and then he is buried in this barrow with part of the dragon treasure. And so as you read this story, or as you think about it, there's a few questions to think about. What role do women play, right? Are they even named? We have Grendel's mother. That's not really a name. Wealhtheow is like an afterthought name. It's just not even included in all of them, right? Does one represent good and one represent evil? And then, are these characters really well thought out, right? Why does the poem begin and end with a funeral? I said it begins with this funeral of a great king and then ends with the funeral of Beowulf. Why would that be? Why are Grendel and his mother not described? Why would a poet, someone whose entire world is sort of made up with words, why doesn't he describe what these creatures look like? Are they scarier without a description, right? Why does the poet make Grendel's mother stronger? She is almost able to kill Beowulf, and had God not intervened, she would have killed Beowulf. Why does the poet make her so strong? And then why is he known for killing monsters instead of men, right? Would he be as great of a hero if he killed men, right? Think of it symbolically, right? He's supposed to be this Christian, Christ-like hero figure. And what would it look like if he's famous for killing men? All right, so why doesn't he kill why does he kill monsters instead of men? Why does the poet make Beowulf's men desert him at the end? I talked about that a little bit. What kind of person do you think Beowulf is? And then how are light and darkness used as symbols of good and evil in this story? Let me know if you have any questions or if you think of anything else about this. Have a great day. Bye.